All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing well. If we could do just a quick sound check, let me know that you guys can hear me okay and you can see the slides that are on my screen. Okay. And you can see what's on my screen? You can see the slides? Okay. Excellent. For some reason, I have it open on my tablet as well, and they're not showing up on my tablet. So I'll assume we're good to go. And I'm super excited to be here with you guys. You know, it's going to be a jam-packed hour. So I want to make sure you guys really kind of buckle your seatbelts and get ready to go on a ride and take some notes. If you haven't yet downloaded the note taker, go ahead and do that, because I think it's going to help you follow along with what we're doing. The note taker is going to track with these slides that we're going to go through. And so I'll walk you through it. I'll point out a few things as we go, but you'll be able to take those notes, have those notes to refresh, because one of the things you're going to find with these strategies we're going to talk about today is that they're the types of strategies that I think will make sense to you as I'm illustrating them. But then after the fact, when you're kind of alone in your room, in your office, wherever you're studying for the GMAT and you're trying to apply them, sometimes it's not always so obvious how to apply them. And so you want to make sure that you have the notes to kind of go back to and refresh. Now, I know it's afternoon where I am. It's morning where some of you guys are. We have participants really from all over the country and even all over the world, which is really exciting. You know, that tells me a couple things. It tells me certainly that there's really a high demand for business school, for taking the GMAT and doing well on the GMAT. You know, but it also tells me that there are a lot of questions out there. There are people out there who, you know, want to do well on this GMAT because they want to get into the business school of their choice. But how do you do that? And where are the sticking points? And specifically when it comes to GMAT math, you know, there are definitely some things that we need to brush up on and so forth. So I'll give you a little bit more introduction about myself here in a moment. What I want to do actually, if you click over to the polls area, I am starting a poll. All right, so here's the poll, the first poll. So like I said, you can kind of click over and see the poll on your screen. Go ahead and answer this. How long have you been studying for the GMAT? So I just want to get a sense of kind of who out there is kind of where you guys are in the process. Have you been studying for less than a month? Maybe you've been studying for a couple of months and you're still trying to kind of get over the hump. Maybe you've been studying for more than 2 months, a bunch of you guys. So some of you guys, what is the GMAT? Like you're brand new and aren't quite sure what you're in for. Okay, so nobody falls into that category. That's good. But a lot of you guys are kind of newbies. A few of you guys have been studying more than 2 months. And okay, just letting the final results trickle in. Okay, so I'm going to end that. You should actually see the results. And I want to bring up another poll really quickly. Again, just to get a better sense of kind of where we are in the process. All right, so this poll is about kind of your feelings about the GMAT quantitative section, right? So we're obviously going to be talking about that today. This is going to be a webinar about the quantitative section of the GMAT. And I want to get a sense of how you feel about the math section of the GMAT, right? And so my feelings about the GMAT quantitative section can be described as follows. I feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So far, 0% of you have feel that way about the quantitative section, which is fine. I don't think anybody loves it. Oh, okay, the first person said yes. It makes you like the GMAT math section. So hopefully you like it even more after today's webinar. A lot of you are kind of indifferent to it, which is fine, but actually a little over a third of you say your last dentist appointment was more preferable, so you're not a big fan of it. So you're in the right place at the right time. Let me go ahead and end that poll. And over under the offers section, you see that I have given you a link to the note takers. So if you haven't actually downloaded the note takers yet, you can go ahead and do that. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to dive in. Like I said, I have a lot of content to go through. It's going to be a very content-packed, content-rich webinar. So I'm going to do my best to get through all of this material. So I won't always pause to answer your questions. I may not even see some of your questions until, towards the end of the webinar, but you can go ahead and post them anyway. Let me just kind of set the stage here quickly, before we dive in. Some of you guys are fairly new. By now, you should all recognize, though, what you're in store for on the GMAT, right? The format of the GMAT. The GMAT is comprised of 4 major sections. You start off by writing that essay, and you get a score from 0 to 6. And then you have the integrated reasoning section and get that score from 1 to 8. And then is what I call the meat and the potatoes of the GMAT, right? The quant section and the verbal section. And that's that all-important score between 200 and 800. And so today, we're going to be focused exclusively on the quantitative section of the GMAT, and specifically within the quantitative section, it's broken out into 2 major question types. Again, nobody said they're brand new to the GMAT, so I know this is all stuff that you're familiar with. But within the world of GMAT Quant, you have problem-solving questions. A little bit more than half of the questions are going to be problem-solving questions. And then the other slightly less than half are going to be those data sufficiency questions. One of the strategies we're going to be talking about today, that's not true. A couple of the strategies we're going to be talking about today do have applications for data sufficiency, but I'm not going to really get too specific about the data sufficiency applications of these strategies. We're primarily going to be focused today on problem solving. So I wanted to just situate us in kind of time and space and make sure you understand that in the world of the GMAT, we're in the quant section and we're specifically looking at problem solving, which are those garden variety math problems covering your basic arithmetic, basic algebra, geometry, and data analysis. Now, one of the main questions I get from a lot of my students, and you may feel this way, especially if you're one of those people who responded that you would rather be going to the dentist than studying GMAT Quant, is, where do I begin? So a lot of times you see a question pop up on your screen, and the question is, how do I begin working on this problem? Does that make sense? Do any of you guys feel that way? And go ahead and type in the chat area. I want to make sure that you're still tracking with me. Sarmad said, has it started yet? So I want to make sure that you guys are still kind of hearing what I'm talking about and seeing what I'm saying. But have you ever had that experience where like you're studying or you see a question, maybe you're doing a practice test and a question pops up and it's like, okay, where do I even begin? And that's really the purpose of this webinar, is to equip you with strategies to know how to begin. And let me tell you a little bit about where this came about, that's the launch point, Ryan, figuring out that launch point. Let me tell you again how this webinar kind of came about and how the focus of this came about. Here's a picture of me, actually. So quite a few years ago, I've been teaching the GMAT for over 10 years. And I actually started when I was in business school myself. I was looking for a part-time job. I just wanted to make a little extra income. I had done, to help pay for my student loans that were going to be coming up, and just to kind of pay the bills while I was in business school. And I had done really well on the GMAT, obviously, and so I got hired on to teach the GMAT for a company. You may or may not have heard of it. I'm not going to mention the company's name, but I'll never forget the interview process. Right, so I went in. And they liked my resume, they liked my GMAT score, but they wanted to make sure I was going to be able to teach well, and they also wanted to make sure that I could do the stuff that I knew enough about the GMAT. So I remember I was sitting in the room, and he gave me a quiz. Basically, he gave me a list of questions to answer, and that's fine. So I'm cruising along, and I'm having no problem with a lot of the questions. I'm just answering them, and then I get to this question. It was a math question, and it was tough. It was really hard. It was a hard GMAT math question. And I did not immediately know how to do it, or I'd kind of forgotten how to do it the traditional way, the algebraic way. And I sat there and I stared at it. And I had this thought go through my mind. And the thought was this. The thought was, I need to get this question right because I want to get hired for this job. And my guess is if I don't get all these questions right, he's probably going to hire somebody else. Does that make sense? I mean, I was like, I probably have to get this question right, but I don't know how to get this question right. But the next thought was, but I bet I could figure it out. So I bet if I think creatively, like my back is against the wall, I need to get a right answer on this. How am I going to get a right answer on it? And so I thought creatively and I attacked the question from a different angle. In fact, using one of the strategies I'm going to teach you today. And I ended up getting the question right, and I was obviously hired. But I had this realization in that moment, as I went on to teach the GMAT, and I thought about the best way to teach the GMAT to my students. Your goal, your job is to get right answers on test day, not necessarily to do these questions in the way that that your high school algebra teacher would have been proud of you for. And so if you have your note taker and you're following along, that very first paragraph with the blank, right? Strategy. Strategy is the word you want to write in there. Strategy is perhaps the biggest differentiator between those who do well on the GMAT and those who don't. It means getting right answers more quickly and more accurately. And so I went on and kind of parlayed that, right? I love this cartoon on your screen. My aspirations to be a Buddhist monk were dashed when I failed the monastic aptitude test. It seems like a lot of us pin our hopes on our future career, certainly to getting into business school, on this GMAT. We put a lot of weight on the GMAT, whether right or wrong. But ultimately, why are you taking the GMAT? Because it's a means to an end, right? It's a means to an end. You're trying to get right answers. And that's the approach that I took when I launched my company, Dominate the GMAT, a little over 5 years ago now. So you may be familiar with my website if you've been there or not, but I launched Dominate the GMAT, and I've taken this approach, and the results are obviously incredible results for students. Here's just one testimonial. I think even more important than anything is these strategies are going to give you confidence. When you think about the goal, it's going to give you that launching point, right? But here Carol says, look, the main thing I benefited from your course is the self-confidence it gave me, right? Overcoming the anxiety and ultimately getting the score I wanted. And then look at the end, he says, now I'm in the business school that I wanted, and wasn't that the whole point after all? That's why you're taking the GMAT, guys, to get into business school. And so what I want you to do is I want you to shift your thinking as we go into today's webinar topic and think, how can I maybe come at GMAT math a little bit differently than I've come at it in the past, right? And so I'm getting, okay, let me see. I'm getting some chat things that you're not seeing the screen clearly. Is it maybe because there's an image on the screen and the text just isn't clear? Give me a little bit more. So you have a blurred screen. Does everybody have a blurred screen, or is it okay does anybody else have a good screen? Let me go ahead and see what you guys are seeing. Okay, the text is blurry. The text is not clear. All right, let me try something really quickly. Okay, so it's blurred. So yours is not so bad. Okay for you, Joel. Okay, I wanted to be able to go full screen with this so you can see it a little bit better. But I should be able to do it this way. Let me try this. Let me try this for a second. I'm going to stop sharing this screen this way. All right, let's see if that's a little bit better. I'm going to share it in a slightly different way. So go ahead and let me know if you have any issues with it anymore. All right. All right. So that's the mindset, right? And actually, back to your note takers. Well, we'll dive in 1 second. And so we're going to dive in right now, but stick around to the end of the class because I am going to have a couple of special offers for you. I mentioned a special offer, I think, in the emails leading up to this. I have a couple offers for you, so you're definitely going to want to stick around to the end, including learning how to actually get this incredible book by Paul Bodine about MBA applications. So the GMAT is obviously one part of the puzzle. You have to do well on the GMAT, but you also have to to do the rest of the application, right? And so this is a great book to help you with the essays especially, but also interviewing and lots of different aspects of the MBA application process. And I'm going to tell you how you can get a copy of that book for free as well. So stick around to the end for that, but let's go ahead and dive in. And if you're looking at your note taker, right? You see that triad. I don't actually have a slide of this up on the screen, but you see the GMAT triad of success. And if you're trying to do well at anything, what are the three components of that, right? There are three components, three circles, right? You need to know content. So if you're filling in your note taker, right, that blue circle at the top, you can write in the word content. You have to know stuff. You have to know quadratic equations. You have to know how to find the circumference of a circle. You have to know subject-verb agreement rules for GMAT sentence corrections. You have to know pronoun rules for GMAT sentence corrections. You have to know how to find assumptions and analyze arguments for critical reasoning, right? I mean, there's a certain amount of content you have to know. And even on the math section, there's definitely content you have to know. You can have all the strategy in the world, but if you don't remember how to add fractions, for example, or you don't remember how to find the area of a triangle, it's going to be hard to get certain questions right. So there's clearly content you have to learn. But think about anything you try to do well at. And in one of the emails I sent you about this webinar, I talked about the analogy of golf and Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods knows how to hit a golf ball straight. He has the content knowledge. He has the physical skills to hit a golf ball. But one of the reasons he won so many tournaments was because the strategy he brought to the course as well, the way he thought through the golf course. And you need to do the same on the GMAT. And that is the focus of today's webinar, is the strategy portion, how to look at a question and move forward quickly and effectively. And kind of the final piece then, if you're filling out your note taker, the red circle would be practice. Ultimately, you can know the content, you can know the strategies, but you have to apply it. And the best way to apply it is through practice, 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 right? So why these strategies? Well, ultimately, again, your goal is to get more right answers more efficiently. And what you're going to find, what a lot of my students find, what I certainly found in that moment where I had to get a right answer, is that the techniques I'm going to teach you today are generally faster. You can usually get a right answer faster than doing it the traditional way. And that's important because it is a timed test. For a lot of students, these techniques and strategies are going to be easier for you than doing the questions in the traditional way. Not always. So here's kind of the caveat. Sometimes if you look at a question, including maybe some of the sample questions we're going to go through today, maybe I'll pop up some questions on the screen and you're just going to say, wow, that's like an easy question. I don't know why you're using that as an example. Well, if you immediately know how to attack a question, go for it. But if you get stuck, right? So here's two other good reasons why these strategies are important. One, they give you that launch point, that starting point. It gives you a place to start when you immediately recognize that a question is a good candidate for a certain question type, right? Or for a certain strategy. But a lot of times they help you avoid wrong answers, because think about the way the GMAT works. The test makers obviously write a question and then they know what the right answer is and they decide, okay, the correct answer is going to be answer choice D. But then how do you think they come up with the 4 other wrong answer choices? There's usually a rhyme or a reason to those wrong answer choices. They think, okay, what mistake, what common trap might a student fall into? Where might a student go wrong if they're, factoring a quadratic equation, for example? Okay, we'll make that wrong answer answer choice A. Well, what if they do this and make this mistake here? That'll be answer choice B. What if they multiply by a negative instead of a positive? Okay, that'll be answer choice C. Does that make sense? And so sometimes, even though you may think you're doing the question the right way, if you accidentally make a mistake, you'll get an answer and you'll think it's the right answer, but it's actually the wrong answer, but it's there. Whereas if you do some of these strategies I'm going to teach you and you get a wrong answer, it's probably not going to be there. And so it gives you a chance to kind of circle back, avoid making that mistake, and give it another try. So there's lots of reasons. But I think this idea of having that launching point is crucial. And so I'm going to talk today about having a Pavlovian response. And what that means is, I want you to see certain question types pop up on your screen and say, this is a good candidate for X, Y, or Z strategy. Right? So Pavlov's dogs, classical conditioning, I want you to have that conditioning at the end of this webinar to say, oh, this is one of those question types. I immediately know how to proceed. Does it make sense? Are you guys tracking with me? Are you excited? Hopefully this is encouraging to you already. So go ahead and type in the chat area. Let me know you're tracking. Let me know that you're excited. And let's go ahead and dive in to the first of these 4 all-important non-standard GMAT math strategies. And the first strategy is a strategy that I call working backwards. All right, thanks, Ryan. Glad to see you're tracking. Awesome. All right. And so working backwards. And here's the way this works, right? And so if you're taking notes on your note taker, kind of the strategy is working backwards. How are you going to have that Pavlovian response? When are you going to want to use this strategy? Guys, it's like having tools in a tool belt, right? You want a hammer in your tool belt. You want a screwdriver in your tool belt. You want a drill in your tool belt. But each tool isn't necessarily the best tool for each problem in your house. You wouldn't want to use a hammer for something where you actually need a screwdriver. And same thing on the GMAT. So just because I'm going to teach you working backwards, you will not always be able to work backwards on every single GMAT problem-solving question. I hope you understand that. However, you will be able to use this strategy on a large number of questions, a large percentage of questions, and I want you to recognize when you can use it, right? Think of this strategy as your hammer. When do you have a nail? Well, you have a nail when the answer choices are all numbers. Does it make sense? So a question pops up on the screen and you say, okay, it's a problem-solving question. The answer choices are all numbers. Maybe this is a nail. Maybe I should take out the hammer, the non-standard strategy of working backwards, and try to solve it that way. And here's a perfect example. So you see the question on your screen. And again, maybe this is a question where you're thinking to yourself, this is super easy, Brett. I don't need a non-standard strategy for this. I can just kind of set up an algebraic equation and solve for X. Good for you. But we have dozens and dozens of people from all over the world on this webinar. My guess is if it's really easy for you, for 95% of the other people on this webinar, they're like, please give me a way to do this question easier, right? So Joel says, I'm sort of conditioned to first look at what is given. Is this sort of similar? Kind of, right? It's kind of similar. And so, Angelica, if it's blurred, I think it's a bandwidth issue on your end. The recommendation to maybe refresh or reconnect could help. If it's because it's perfectly clear on all the computers I'm using, and so I think it might be a bandwidth issue. So you might want to just refresh. So Joel, yeah, it's looking at, okay, what exactly is the question asking for, and zeroing in on the question itself is important, right? So this is about a ball being dropped. And it's asking at what height it's going to rise each time so that after 3 bounces, it's rising to a height of 24 inches. And notice the question, right? The question says, what is this fraction? Well, is this a good candidate for working backwards? Well, let me go back. Remember our criteria. Our criteria is that the answer choices are all numbers, right? Is this a good candidate? Yes. The answer choices are all numbers, so maybe it's a good candidate. Does it make sense? And so that's kind of criteria number 1. Now, criteria number 2 is the question asks for a single unadulterated value in isolation. Haney, I am checking the chats. I am looking up. I see that it's blurred for some of you, but I'm also seeing from some people that it's not blurred. So I think for a lot of people, everything's okay. It may be a bandwidth issue on your end. And I think if you reconnect or refresh your screen, it will help. All right. So you might want to just try that. If it's still giving all of you guys problems, type it in the chat area. But I think for a lot of people, it's working okay. So just kind of keep me posted on that. All right. So when is this a good strategy? The answer choices are all number, and the question asks for a single value that you can basically take those answer choices and plug them back in to the question to see if it actually works, right? Because look at this question. We could come at this question from one of a couple of different ways, right? We could either try to set up an algebraic equation, like let x equal the height to which the ball rises equals x, right? And then set up some sort of algebraic equation and hope we get one of these answers. Or we could say, look, one of those answers is actually right. Let's test them and see which one actually works. And that's another reason the strategy is so cool, because you get the built-in confirmation. At the end of doing the strategy, you will actually be able to physically prove to yourself that it is the right answer. You don't have to just wonder if you actually solved the problem correctly. Does that make sense? And so what is this fraction? Well, I don't know. Let's test those fractions. Let's test those fractions and actually see which one works. Do you see how it's basically coming at it from the other way? It's not the way your algebra teacher would have been pleased about, but it's nevertheless, something that helps you get right answers. So that's the win of the strategy. Now, in terms of the how of the strategy, here's how we do it. We're going to test the answer choices. We're going to work backwards from the answer choices, but you want to start with answer choice C. So you want to assume the correct answer is answer choice C. Why do you think that's the case? Go ahead and type in the chat area. Why are you going to want to assume the correct answer is answer choice C? Why not start with A or B? What do you guys think? Yeah, because the middle number, the answer choices are in ascending or descending order, and they always will be. A lot of people don't know that about the GMAT on problem-solving questions where the answers are all numbers. That's right. And so here's what it's going to do. We're going to test that middle number, and one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to work, right? So kind of step one is, if you're filling out your note taker, assume the answer is C, then we're going to test it. We're just going to work the problem using that answer choice. And here's the thing, if it works, great, that is your answer. The correct answer is answer choice C. But Charles, you're exactly right. If it doesn't work, it then gives you the ability to eliminate 3 answer choices, right? Not just answer choice C, but you'll know, like, okay, is 1/3 wrong and it's too big of a fraction? Or is it wrong and it's too small of a fraction? And now you'll know that you can eliminate other answer choices as well. So let's go ahead and solve this problem, right? We have this ball and it's going to bounce, right? And it's currently 192 inches off the ground. By the way, always use your scratch paper. He or she who uses the most scratch paper on the GMAT wins. So you always want to diagram stuff out, draw figures and so forth. And here's what it's going to do. It's going to bounce up. Now, the question wants us to say, how high is it going to bounce? I don't know. It's going to bounce like X inches. But we're going to cheat. We're going to beat the test makers. We've already decided we're going to assume it's going to bounce up 1/3 as high. So what's 1/3 of 192? Well, that's just 192 divided by 3. 3 goes into 19. 6 times 60, 64, right? So it's going to go up 64 inches on the first bounce. So this is like bounce number 1. And then it's going to bounce again and go up another 1/3 as high, right? So on the second bounce, it's going to go 1/3 of 64. Well, 1/3 of 64 is 21 point something. I can stop right there, can't I? Can answer choice C be the correct answer? No. No, you guys are exactly right. Why? Because it says it has to be all the way up at 24 inches after the third bounce. Well, this bounced only 2 times. It's only up to 21 inches at this point. There's no way it's going to defy the laws of physics and somehow bounce higher all the way up to 24 inches on the next bounce. Does that make sense? And so answer choice C cannot be correct. And not only is C incorrect, does it need to be bouncing higher each time or lower each time to get all the way up to 24 inches after the third bounce? Obviously, we need it to be bouncing higher. So that means answer choice A is wrong and answer choice B is wrong. And now we simply test one of the other 2 answer choices. And so we would just do it again. We would say, okay, we're starting at 192. And let's say it's going to bounce up. And honestly, it doesn't matter which one you test. I would say test whichever one you think will be easier to do the math, right? I mean, don't make things harder than they have to be for yourself, right? So I'm going to say it's going to bounce up half as high. So let's say it bounces up 96 inches the second time, right? And then the next time it bounces up half as high again, 48 inches. And then the next time it bounces up half as high again, well, half of 48 is 24. Aha, look at that. That's exactly what we need it to be. after the third bounce. So the correct answer must be answer choice D, 1/2. Does it make sense? You guys tracking? Does it make sense? And so it's brilliant because it gives you two things. It gives you that starting point. You see a question pop up on your screen. You recognize that it's a good candidate for working backwards because the answer choices are all numbers. You simply start testing them, starting with answer choice C. And by the way, you then get built-in confirmation that you actually have the right answer by the time you're done. It's a brilliant strategy. It's going to help you on hard questions. It will help you get unstuck. It will help you avoid doing the complex algebra on certain question types. And so I think for a lot of you, it's going to be a breath of fresh air strategy, right? And so if you're completing your note taker, obviously the kind of the third step is just keep testing the remaining answer choices until you find the one that works. But really, you'll only have to test one additional answer choice right after you've eliminated those first three. So how's that for a strategy, for a non-standard, valuable GMAT math strategy? But there's more than just a nail on the test, isn't there? Right? So you need more tools in your tool belt, right? This webinar is the top 4 GMAT math strategies. That's only one of them. So let's take a look at the second strategy. And if my memory serves me, this is actually the strategy that I ended up kind of defaulting to when I was doing my interview. It was an algebra type question and I just kind of got stuck and I was like, man, I got to come at this from another way. And kind of without even knowing I was doing it, I came at it from this approach, made up some numbers and made a difficult question a lot easier. And so that's strategy number 2. So on your note taker, strategy number 2 is make up numbers. Make up numbers, right? Your goal, the objective is to make problems that involve variables, right? Why is algebra hard? Like, think back to when you were a teenager. Algebra is hard because it's esoteric, it's abstract, because you're dealing with all these variables. But think about how much easier certain problems can be if we actually work with real numbers. And so what we want to do is we want to make these questions concrete and therefore easier. And the way to do that is to work with real numbers, right? So when are we going to have this Pavlovian response? When does it make sense to use this strategy? And it's very, very simple. Anytime you see variables on the GMAT, you want to make up numbers for those variables. And this, I'm going to write it on the screen. This goes for data sufficiency as well. Now, you have slightly different ways of making up numbers on data sufficiency, and I'm probably not going to have time to get into those today. But when you see variables on data sufficiency, you also want to make up numbers for those variables to kind of figure out whether a statement is sufficient or not. Here, we're going to talk about the problem-solving way of doing it. But if you see variables in the question and answer choices, that is enough. You want to use this strategy. Now, I have an OR criteria here. Criteria 1 by itself is sufficient. So you don't need anything else. You see variables, you make up numbers for those variables to get out a right answer more quickly. But there's another time when making up numbers makes sense, and I'm going to also do an example with you of this, and it's when the answer depends on some value not given in the question. And I know that might not make a lot of sense right now, so sit tight. I will show you an example of that, but let's go ahead and look at an example of kind of this first criterion. A problem-solving question where you have variables in the question and answer choice. All right? So here's the question. And for a couple of you, based on your poll results, this question is making you break out in a cold sweat. Maybe you're breaking out in hives a little bit. For others of you, you wish you were at the dentist getting a root canal instead of sitting here trying to figure out this question. Hopefully 5 minutes from now, you're going to like me a whole lot better, and you're going to like your chances at the GMAT a whole lot better, right? Why? Well, because why does the question look challenging? If it looks challenging to you. Now, some of you might look at this and say, hey, this is super easy. And you can just quickly write up a quick algebraic solution to this and figure out an equation that clearly matches one of those answer choices. And within 30 seconds, you have the right answer and you're on to the next question. And I would say, even if that's you, first of all, well done. pat yourself on the back. Congratulations. But there will be some other questions on the GMAT with variables that will be more difficult than this example, right? I'm not choosing 700 level questions for this webinar. I'm not choosing easy questions, but I'm not choosing 700 level questions. So this still may be a valuable strategy for you, even if you're really good at algebra. But for the rest of us, right, for the 95% of the rest of us on this webinar, we want an easier way of attacking this question. And so it pops up on our computer screen, and we have that Pavlovian response, and we say, this is a screw, so I need a screwdriver, right, strategy. I'm going to use the making up numbers strategy. Why? Because I see variables. I've got X, I've got Y, I've got Y minutes. What am I going to do with that? That's a mess. Well, here's how the strategy works. All right. So if you're on your note taker, make sure to take notes of how to actually implement this. And it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Like, dun, dun, dun. How do you do this? You make up numbers for the variables, right? I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. You make up numbers for the variables in the question. So let me actually skip ahead, and then I'm going to come back to that last slide for a second, right? So on your scratch paper, on test day, when you see a question like this pop up on your screen, it gives you that launch point, that starting point. You literally want to write X equals and Y equals. Even if you don't know what to do with that or like what's next, at least you're going to start doing something. Does that make sense? So it's a very simple place to start on your scratch paper. Okay, I don't necessarily know what I'm going to do with this, but I'm going to let X equal something, and I'm going to let Y equal something, right? X cents and Y minutes. Now, here's the reality. I'm going to go back for a second. What numbers do you want to make up? The truth is you can make up any numbers. It will work with any numbers, but here's kind of a caveat, right? So the caveat, you might have to write this in the margins on your note taker because I didn't really leave space for this, but always choose easy numbers, right? Let's skip ahead for a second. Like how many cents, X cents, do we want the phone call to last or to cost? I don't know, but I don't want to choose something like 438 cents. That's just stupid. Like there's no reason to choose a really hard number like that when you don't have a calculator on the GMAT. And actually, when we're talking about easy numbers, if we look ahead at least a little bit, now we don't always want to try to outthink the test, really honestly, just make up any old number. But I do know that at some point, I'm going to have to account for X divided by 3 cents. So I might as well let X be something that is a multiple of 3, right? I mean, I could let X equal 5, but then each half minute is going to be 5/3 cents. So that doesn't really make sense. So why don't I let X equal, I don't know, 9, 6 or 9 or something, right? Just because that's going to be an easy number. So choose easy numbers when making up numbers for the variables. Also, just as a general rule, avoid 0, 1, and numbers in the question. And the reason is, like, thinking back here, I wouldn't want to let X equal 3. Because if I let X equal 3, then 3 divided by 3 equals 1 cent for every half minute. And while it may work out, it may lead to some issues because what happens anytime you multiply by 1 or divide by 1, you're still just left with the original number. And so we're trying to beat the test, right? We're trying to outthink the test makers. I get it. But we don't want to be so clever that we don't end up actually getting at the algebraic underpinning of the question. We still have to figure out the question. Does it make sense? So choose easy numbers. Just as a general rule, avoid 0, 1, and numbers in the question. This part, by the way, does not apply for data sufficiency. On data sufficiency, you actually really 0, 1, 0 and 1 are really good numbers to test on data sufficiency, but on problem solving, avoid those. And then if you have a conversion, choose 2 times the conversion factor. So for example, if we were going to have to convert seconds to minutes, let S equal 120 seconds instead of 60 seconds so that it converts to 2 minutes, instead of 1 minute, the exact same thing that we kind of just did here. So those are just some sub rules for you. But again, like I said, simply make up numbers. Let's see, Joel says, Yes, Joel, for sure. Now, every question isn't necessarily going to have kind of a second part where you're then going to have to divide it by something. So in this particular question, I'm going to have x divided by 3 cents for each half minute. So I'm just kind of thinking ahead. Sometimes you won't have that part of the question. So it's literally, you could just make up any old number for x cents. So in that case, I might have let x equal 5 or 2 or something easy. But here I know x represents the number of cents, and I also know that I'm going to have to divide it by 3 at some point. So I'm just going to let x be a multiple of 3. And then what do we want to let y equal? So we have the call costs 9 cents for each first minute, and then 3 cents, right? Because x divided by 3. So x over 3 equals 3 cents per, half minute, half minute, half minute, half min. Okay. And this is what you're going to want to write on your scratch paper. So how long is a Y minute phone call going to be? Well, again, Y could be anything, choose easy numbers. I don't know, like a 5-minute phone call, right? So we've made up our numbers. We're going to let X equal 9 and Y equal 5. So we've made up numbers for our variables. But now step number 2 is, okay, what do we do with that now? Well, we literally now work the problem using our numbers in place of the variables. Because I want you to think of something. X equals 9, Y equals 5. I want you to think about how much easier this question would be if the question had read, if a phone call costs 9 cents for each minute and 3 cents for each additional half minute, how much would a 5-minute phone call cost in cents? Are light bulbs going on for you? I hope they are. Do you see how much easier that question is? And if that were the question, we could all solve it, very, very quickly. But it's when it contains variables that we start to freak out, we start to panic, we start to break out in the cold sweat, and so forth and so on. And so that's why strategy becomes so crucial. So now we simply work the problem. Let me change the pen color and let's work it out. And here's literally what you do, like minute number 1. How much does the first minute cost? Well, we already said 9 cents. How much does the second minute cost? This is where it's maybe a little bit tricky. Make sure you don't get mixed up. How much does the second minute cost? Not just 3 cents, right? A common mistake might be to say 3 cents. It's not 3 cents. It's 3 cents per half minute. So that means it's 6 cents per additional minute, right? That's right, Ryan, 6 cents. So the second minute's going to cost 6 cents. The third is going to cost 6 cents. The fourth is going to cost 6 cents. The fifth minute's going to cost 6 cents. So what's our total? How much does this phone call cost? Well, 6 times 4 is 24, plus another 9 is 33 cents. So congratulations, we have actually solved the actual question, right? Using our made up numbers, we have an actual answer to our question of 33 cents. But what's the missing piece? Which of these answer choices does that match? Because, Brett, the answer choices still don't look like 33 cents. Congratulations, I solved the question, 33 cents, but none of those answer choices look like 33 cents. So that is step number 3. Now we also need to plug our made up numbers into the answer choices to see which one matches 33, right? So let's kind of go back here. Here's what we did. We said X is 9. That means that's 3 cents per half minute for a 5-minute phone call. And the actual answer is 33 cents. So now what we want to do is plug those made up values into the answer choices as well and see which one matches it, right? So 2 times 9 is like 18 plus 2 times X times Y. So 2 times Y is just 10. So 10 times 9 is 90. So that's 108 divided by 27. Here's the thing. You don't have a calculator, so you don't necessarily want to waste time actually doing that. You just know that that's going to be about what? It's going to be about 4, right? Because 25 goes into 100 4 times. So that's about 4 but that's not the same thing as 33, so answer choice A is not correct. Now, Ryan, good question. When the answer choices are variables, there's really no rhyme or reason to them. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to start with answer choice C because they're not necessarily going to be in ascending or descending order. What you can do is quickly eliminate some clearly wrong answer choices. Like look at answer choice E, right? X times Y. Right? 9 times 5 is 45 over 3. That's clearly not going to be 33. So you can eliminate some answers quickly just by kind of eyeballing it and saying, hey, are we even in the ballpark here? But then some of them you might actually have to figure out. So let's look at answer choice B. Answer choice B says X plus, so 2X times Y we already figured out is 90, plus X, which is 9. So that's 99. Hey, look at that. 99 divided by 3 is 33. That is exactly what we got when we solved the question. Those puppies match up. So the correct answer is answer choice B. Does it make sense? Awesome. So Ryan said that makes sense. Actually, I think that was in reference to, not necessarily starting with answer choice C, but that's it, guys. That is the strategy. Is this helpful? Is this also, eye-opening? Hey, how do we take an esoteric, algebra-based, variable type question and make it a lot more concrete? Well, we make it more concrete by using real numbers and simply test them and see which one actually works. Now, this is an example where this makes a ton of sense for you right now when you're sitting here having me walk you through it. But what happens when you're trying to figure it out on your own? You're going to have to practice this. Now, the good news is I'm going to give you a really cool bonus that's going to help you, with the practice portion of this and make sure you don't forget any of this stuff. But just realize, hey, these are new tools. You have to get adept at these tools. All right. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to go very quickly through this one because I want to get to the last strategies as well. But I did mention that there's a second criterion, a second time when making up numbers is a good strategy. And that's when the answer depends on some value that's not given in the question. And here's an example of that, right? So we have Jason who won some goldfish at the state fair. And during the first week, 1/5 of them died. And then during the second week, 3/8 of those still alive at the end of the first week died, blah, 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 blah. What fraction of the original goldfish were still alive after the 2 weeks? Now, you might be thinking to yourself, hey, Pavlovian response, this is actually a hammer and a nail question. Can't I just work backwards? Can I assume the answer is C and see if that's the right fraction? Maybe. But the thing is, what does 1/2 represent? 1/2 represents how many were still alive after 2 weeks. That's after 3/8 of them died in the second week and 1/5 of them died in the first week. So how are you going to backtrack that far? It's actually not really a good candidate for working backwards. And you may not realize that until you started trying to actually do it. But the question doesn't ask for that single value in isolation. It's a little bit more complex. It's a fraction of the original goldfish that's a result of kind of 2 multiplications of fractions. So it's not as clear cut as just working backwards. But it is a good candidate for making up numbers. Why? Because Jason won some goldfish at the state fair. That's like the variable X, isn't it? How many goldfish? I don't know. It doesn't say. See, the problem wants us to work completely in the abstract. It wants us to let X equal the number of goldfish and then multiply X, times 1/5 and then subtract that all from X, because that's how many were left, and then multiply that whole thing by 3/8 to see how many died, and then compare that to the original X. So like that whole thing divided by X. Oh my gosh, what an annoying complex algebraic solution. Or what if we just make up a number for the number of original starting goldfish, right? Make it a lot more concrete. So how many goldfish do you want to say we had at the start of the state fair? Right? What do we want to let X equal? How many goldfish did we start with? Well, here's a little kind of tips, a couple tips for you. If you're going to be making up numbers in this type of situations, and the question contains fractions, choose the least common denominator. And the reason is, yeah, Dean, 40. Angelica, 100's not bad. The problem is 100's really good if you're dealing with percents. So 100's a great number to choose if you're dealing with percents, but with fractions, like 100, let's say we started with 100. Okay, 1/5 will easily work for 100, right? So that'll give you 20, but 3/8 won't necessarily work well with 20. But if we let the number of goldfish X equal the least common denominator 40, we know it's going to work well with both fractions. So now we can solve the problem. So basically what happens in week 1/5 of the 40 died. So 40 times 1/5 equals 8. So 8 goldfish died. Does it make sense? So how many are left? Well, how many are left is just 40 minus 8. So 32 goldfish are left. So now in week 2, we're starting week 2 with 32 goldfish, and 3/8 of those now died, right? So it goes into 32 4 times. So 4 times 3 is just 12 died, which means we have 20 goldfish left, right? The 32 minus the 12 equals 20 goldfish. So at the end of 2 weeks, we have 20 left. And now we can answer the question. What fraction of the original, okay, so if we're, here's a little fraction thing, right? Of the original. So we have a numerator and a denominator. The denominator is the original goldfish, 40. How many were left? 20 are left. So 20 over 40 is 1/2. Answer choice C. So again, a question that's not, it's not hard, it's not a really hard question. It's not a 700 level question. Yeah, Ryan, but the light bulbs are going on. Well, I'll be. Because if you try, just because it's not hard doesn't mean it's easy. And if you didn't immediately know how to solve it the algebraic way, well, now you have tools in your tool belt. Make up numbers. Does it make sense? All right. And now let's move on to strategy number 3, right? So sorry about that, guys. I got something chiming in on me. So strategy number 1, work backwards. Strategy number 2, make up numbers. Strategy number 3 has to do with using the figures to your advantage. Now, Ryan, and some of the rest of you guys who are you're like being blown away, this one's going to blow your socks off, right? Let's turn our attention to geometry. And let's talk about figures for a second. Figures on the GMAT. Figures on problem-solving questions are assumed to be drawn to scale unless otherwise indicated, right? And so if you're using your note taker, you can circle R. Problem-solving questions, they are assumed to be drawn to scale unless otherwise indicated. Now, on data sufficiency questions, they are not assumed to be drawn to scale. And again, I mentioned we have different strategies for data sufficiency. So you'll have to, I don't know, come back or pick up one of my lessons on data sufficiency. So there's some different things to do with data sufficiencies. But on problem solving, they are assumed drawn to scale, and we can use this to our advantage. And specifically, here's how. First of all, we always want to draw a figure if none is given. And if we're going to bother to draw it, we might as well draw it to scale, right? And so if you're going to draw a 45, 45, 90 right triangle, try to make it actually, symmetrical so that the sides are the same. And you might want to hold your scratch paper up and put a little tick mark to make sure that you're drawing a triangle with the same sides that are the same length, just to make sure that it's to scale. Sometimes if it's not to scale, you might want to redraw a figure to scale. And the reason is because once we have a figure that is drawn to scale, and again, most of the time it already will be drawn to scale, we can trust that figure, and it lends to a really cool strategy called eyeballing. Use the figures. Use them to your advantage. For example, on this question, in the circle below, PQ is parallel to diameter OR. So PQ and OR are parallel. And OR has a length of 18, right? So I'm going to label this 18. Just kind of label the diagram as you go on your scratch paper. What is the length of minor arc PQ? So an arc is part of the circumference of a circle, and the minor arc is just this little green line segment I just drew between P and Q. So let me ask you this question. How would you solve this question? How would you do it? Now, some of you guys, especially those of you who may have been studying for the GMAT for less than a month, have absolutely no clue. You haven't seen the geometry in a long time. You forget aspects of finding circle rules. This requires you to know something about inscribed angles, for example. It requires you to know something about the circumference of a circle, because you basically need to take a fraction of the entire circumference to figure out that minor arc. So there's a lot of complex geometry that's going on if you're going to solve this thing geometrically. But what did I say? Imagine you or me, and you were sitting in the interview room, and you had to get this question right if you wanted to get the job. How would you still get a right answer? Or more importantly for you, imagine you were sitting in the GMAT, and you want to get into Harvard Business School, and you know you have to get this question right, but you don't quite remember how to do it. But you said, wait a second, I remember that webinar I attended. Brett said I still need to think about how to get this question right. What am I going to do? Well, how would you do it? How would you do it? Okay, so PQ is half OR. Not necessarily, Fong. That's not half of OR. I mean, you might think it is, but actually eyeballing it, here's my point. What if you eyeball? What if you kind of draw a line down? What fraction of OR is it? Not necessarily half, but or about 1/3. There we go, Fong. Now you're on the right track, right? You basically use 18 as your guide. If a geometry question gives you, there's going to be something, right? Like maybe you know one of the angles, like maybe this angle is 20 degrees. And you're supposed to figure out some other angle. Well, you can literally hold that up to your scratch paper and say, okay, if that's 20, then that's 40, then that's 60, then that's 80, and so forth. And so you can kind of use that to help you. Here, we have a key. The key is that this is 18. And so I literally would want you to hold a piece of paper up to your scratch paper and say, okay, how many PQs are going to fit inside OR? And the truth of the matter is about 1, 2, 3 of them. And so if 3 PQs are going to fit inside OR, then that means PQ is about approximately 6. Does that make sense? And so if I put a gun to your head, you would be able to at least guess, at least eliminate some wrong answer choices. Now, pi, if you remember, pi equals 3.14, so a little bit more than 3. Well, 3 times 3 is 9. And we decided that it's clearly not quite half of the diameter. So E is out. How about 27 divided by 2? That's actually about 14, closer to 14. That's not correct. And actually, these answer choices should be in a different order. So I apologize for that. They should be in ascending or descending order. So that would help you otherwise. How about 7 times 3? 21 divided by 2. That's a little bit greater than 10. So that's not going to be correct. And so forth. 9 times 3, 27 divided by 4. This is a little bit closer to, it's a little bit divided by 4. It's a little bit closer to 7, right? So this is a little bit closer to 7, and answer choice A is a little bit closer to 6. So here's the point, guys. Maybe you have a little bit of trouble choosing between A and B. And I'll grant you that. I'll grant you that maybe you're not 100% sure how to choose between A and B purely based on eyeballing. But if the figure is drawn to scale and you hold it up, your scratch paper up to the screen, you can get very, very accurate and see that it's actually a little bit closer to 6 than it is to 7, and maybe err on the side of answer choice A. And certainly, if you know how to solve it geometrically, you can figure out that the correct answer is answer choice A. Here's my point. You can use the figures to your advantage. Your goal is to get right answers. Does it make sense? So that's absolutely what you want to do. Any questions about that? Is this again eye-opening for you? I hope by now you're starting to understand the logic of what I am talking about. And the logic is outthink the test, figure out how to get right answers. The GMAT is a means to an end, and I want you guys to start thinking that way. Now, think back to what I talked about in the beginning. There are three components, right? That triad of success. You will have to know some content. Would it be helpful on this question to recognize that an inscribed angle, 35 degrees, is 1/2 the measure of the arc that it creates, so that's 70 degrees. And that when we have parallel lines, the opposite interior angles are the same, so that's 35 degrees, which means this arc QR is also 70 degrees, right? And if you have 180 degrees, that means minor arc PQ is 40 degrees. And then you can see what percent of the whole 360 degrees is 40 degrees, blah, 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 right? You can learn the math, and you should learn the math, right? And in my courses, I teach you the actual math as well. I'm not saying that you don't need to actually learn stuff, that you don't need to actually learn a lot of underlying content. But what I am saying is, even if you know the underlying content, strategy helps you get from point A to point B faster. And especially if you're stuck, it gives you that starting point. It gives you a fighting chance. It gives you a chance of getting right answers, even if you're not quite sure how to right out of the gate. All right. So that is my message. Now, we're up against it. I know we're going to go a little bit longer. I don't know if some of you guys only blocked out an hour, but usually I like to keep these things to about an hour, hour and 15 minutes. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to skip strategy number 4, but I'm going to skip to the first bonus because you're going to see how you can actually get strategy number 4 in more detail for free. So strategy number 4 is a strategy called Wouldn't It Be Nice If? And it's basically this umbrella strategy for this mindset of how do I make easier versions of hard questions? And by the way, guys, that's what we just did. Wouldn't it be nice if? WIBNI stands for Wouldn't It Be Nice If? Wouldn't it be nice if? You know, instead of having to set up an algebraic equation, I could just use the answer choices and see which one works. You can. That's a strategy number 1, work backwards. Wouldn't it be nice if, instead of esoteric variables, I were working with real concrete numbers? Yes, of course it would. Wouldn't it be nice if I had real numbers? Yes. So just make up those numbers, right? And there are some other applications to this strategy as well. I don't have time to get into that now. So really your question, I want to wrap this up and I want to give you some ways to move forward because you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, what now? Now what, right? I mean, this has been incredibly helpful. 3 really powerful strategies, but now what? What do I do when I'm on my own? How am I going to remember this stuff? How am I going to apply this stuff? What now? Well, the first thing is obviously practice, practice, practice. Now, I mentioned some special offers. For special offer number 1 is I am literally going to give you my non-standard GMAT math strategies video course absolutely free. Free. Because I don't want to leave you hanging. You need to practice what you just learned. You need a video resource, in my opinion, to revisit these strategies, to be able to press pause and think about these strategies, to see maybe how I apply it to some different examples. And those are all in my instructional videos. But what's also cool about this video course is that it comes with a worksheet with 15 practice questions designed to give you practice implementing the strategies I just taught you. Now, I sell this course a la carte for $27, but like I said, I am literally going to offer it to you for free. So let me go ahead and post this offer. All right, so if you go under the offer section, all you need to do, and you can literally do it right now while I'm finishing up the webinar, is click the green button, or sorry, the orange button that says get it free. And it will take you to a page where you can just put in some registration information and sign up and get membership access to this course that I usually sell for $27 absolutely free. You can revisit this, and this is where you'll be able to learn that 4th strategy. So I apologize a little bit for running out of time. So I want to make sure that you can get in there, you can get the WIBNI strategy, watch the video on WIBNI, and then apply it to some other practice questions and have those worksheets. So that's just my gift for you for showing up, for spending time with me today and getting and spending time with me on this webinar. So that's offer number one. But now offer number two is some of you guys want to go deeper, especially those of you who maybe you've been studying for less than a month and you say, hey, I need a game plan. Or others of you have been saying, I've been studying for a couple months and I am still nowhere near where I need to be. I want to go deeper. And you're realizing, wait a second, Brett just gave me some really cool stuff, but this is just about problem solving. Problem solving is only one half of the quantitative section, which is only half of the whole GMAT, actually really 1/4 of the GMAT. I need to go deeper. And the way to go deeper is with my comprehensive online full GMAT prep course. It is everything you need to dominate the GMAT. It is a comprehensive, proven system, 5-year track record of helping students boost their score on average 112 points out of 800. It is going to guide you, coach you, support you every step of the way. It is going to take the guesswork out of preparing for the GMAT. You'll obviously learn the strategies you learned today, but you already got those, but also strategies for all of the other question types, including data sufficiency. And oh, by the way, there are a lot of strategies for verbal as well. And if you think back to the testimonial I shared early on, it's going to give you that confidence for that test day edge. Everything is available on demand, so it's flexible, so you can study on your terms. And it's going to give you exclusive membership to a back-end membership area with over 24 hours of instructional videos, plus a lot of other stuff. So give me a second. I want to actually walk you through for a second your options, because so I shared my screen. So this is my website, and I'm gonna bring up something where you can click and go to my website. And this is my full course. And don't worry about these prices, because I'm gonna give you a special offer for a discount off of these prices. But I want to show you what your options are, so you're not confused when you're kind of making a decision if you want to move forward with me. I have a silver package, a gold package, and a platinum package. And so what you just need to decide is kind of where are you? What do you actually need? All of the packages contain all of the video content, the instructional content, over 24 hours of instructional videos covering every aspect of the GMAT, over 100 different video lessons on all the question types targeting verbal, quant, the essays, integrated reasoning. You're going to get a detailed syllabus that's going to literally lay out your game plan. So a lot of you are thinking, what do? I need a plan of attack. How do I move forward? So it's going to give you that syllabus, walking you step by step, which videos to watch, which practice questions to do from the homework and so forth. You're going to get all of the worksheets for all sorts of different question types, concept lessons to dive deeper into different question types, a recommended reading list for reading comprehension. It's all backed by my score improvement guarantee. But here's the major difference. The silver package is essentially just the video course. And I say just, but it's incredibly effective. Most students just need that to move forward, and that's fine. That's all you need. The gold package, however, comes with phone support with me, your instructor, but it also comes with 2 textbooks. So the main difference between the silver package and the gold package is that the gold package is going to come with 2 textbooks, including the Official Guide for GMAT Review 2016, which is an incredible source of practice problems straight from the makers of the GMAT, and also a book that I have found to be incredibly helpful. It's an awesome resource of practice questions, but also has some really good instruction, called Ace the GMAT by Brandon Royal. And I will send those to you included with the gold package. So if you're relatively new and you say, I need both of those books, I don't already have them, go with the gold package. And you see you actually get 3 additional practice tests. So you get more practice tests with the gold package as well. Now, if you say, wait a second, I already have the Official Guide for GMAT Review, but I might like Ace the GMAT. Well, I'd still say just go with the silver package, and then you can just buy Ace the GMAT a la carte, and you'll still save money just because of the price difference between the silver and gold package. But if you want both books and additional practice tests, go with the gold package. And the major difference between that and the platinum package is the platinum package comes with everything, including the textbooks and even more practice tests, but it also comes with a weekly live coaching session with me. So it's almost like you get private tutoring included with the platinum package. Now, those sessions are on Thursday nights. So if Thursday nights aren't going to work for you for a live coaching session, maybe you need to stick with the gold package or just plan to listen to the recordings, because I will send you recordings of the Thursday night sessions if you come in with the platinum package. But again, it's a small group environment, so it's not quite private tutoring, but it's a very small, intimate group environment where you can get your questions personally answered. So that's basically kind of the decision point on that. Let me go back and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Because I want to show you kind of what the offer is here. So you basically are going to go in and get that. And what I'm doing is I'm offering 20% off any of those full course packages, 20% off. And so you see that's a huge savings. That's actually $100 off the platinum package. And guys, I don't offer this type of discount regularly. In fact, I've never offered this steep of a discount. Sometimes for people who go through my free session, I'll give a 10% discount, but I never offer a 20% discount. This is just exclusive for you guys who have gone through this webinar. And again, you see this is basically the discount, 20% off either the silver package if you don't need the textbooks, the gold package if you want the textbooks, but you don't feel like you need or want the coaching session on Thursday nights, or the platinum package if you want all of it. And it's very simple. You go to the registration page, and actually let me go back and I'm going to stop sharing that offer for the free non-standard math course. And here is basically the offer page for this bonus, right? And so if you click Get Started Now, that's just a quick link that will take you directly to the page where you can see those package options. But I mentioned a free copy of Paul Bodine's book. As part of this offer, not only are you going to save 20%, but I'm going to throw in Paul Bodine's great applications. Let me write this in. Great applications for business school. That's the name of the book. Sorry about that. So Paul has agreed to partner with me, and just as a free bonus offer for you, he's going to send you a copy of his book as well. It might be the digital copy. It might be the hard copy. I'm not 100% sure, but it's a great additional bonus. I also back this with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you literally have no risk for getting started, but it is a limited time offer. It's only good through Friday at midnight, right? And so if you need a couple days, if you don't get paid till Friday, you have Friday until midnight, but all you have to do is enter this discount code at checkout. So write it on your scratch paper, bonus book 20. Bonus book 20. The way you can think about it is 20% off, right? And you're getting a bonus book as part of this offer. So 20% off plus a bonus book 20 at checkout. And oh, by the way, I'll just go ahead and throw in a couple extra practice tests, even more than what's advertised on my website for the silver and gold packages. The platinum package already gets every test I have. So I can't give you extra tests because I literally don't have extra tests to give out. So that's literally all I have. So that's it, guys. I hope you have found this webinar valuable, empowering, motivating. Hopefully you feel more confident at the end of the day. And I know some of you guys chimed in, in the chat area saying, wow, I was feeling bad about the quantitative section, but I feel much better about it now. So if that's you, that's awesome. I hope you feel empowered to get out there. And again, that mindset of the GMAT is a beatable test. But part of beating it isn't just learning a bunch of stuff and studying a bunch of rules and formulas. Strategy is equally important as well. And that has been the purpose of this. So with that, good luck. I hope to have the opportunity to work with some of you guys more. But if I don't hear from you again, good luck. And may you go out and dominate the GMAT. And I will stick around for a few more minutes to answer any questions you may have in the chat area, and also type the bonus code, the coupon code, in the chat area as well. Take care, everyone. Any other questions? So good. Glad you guys liked it. Any questions about these strategies? Uh, uh, Ryan, which video offer? The video offer about the just the free course, the free video course about these lessons. Here you go. I'll reload that one up. All right. Yep. So that's loaded back up under the offers. So if you want that free, the non-standard strategies, yeah, perfect. So click on that, and I'll also be sending out a replay link in the next few hours, and that'll also have the links to the bonuses in there as well as a replay of this actual webinar. Now, if you go ahead and get that free video course, you know it's a lot of the same content, some slightly different practice questions, but you can, you'll have all of that stuff in there. So you may not need the replay link. So Fahim, can we get the extra tests and the business school book if we bought this course before the webinar? Fahim, I'll talk to you offline about that. I'll have to talk with Paul Bodine about that. Send me an email, Fahim. Ryan, let me so it's just not downloading. Here, let me find the link really quickly. I'll find the link really quickly directly to the free offer page. So hold on a second. All right, here's the direct link to the free bonus offer for that course. Hopefully, if you cut and paste that or click on it, somehow that should work for you. Let me know if that works. Webpage not available. I just went there right now myself. Oh, you said webpage not available before I posted that. So hopefully if you cut and paste that, that should work for you. Still no luck? Ryan, send me an email here. Let me go ahead and share. Here's my contact information. I should have put this up earlier. You can just send me a direct email at brett@dominathegmat.com, and I can manually create an account for you. So just send me your email address, and I can set you up with that, no problem. I'm not sure why that link's not working because it's working just fine for me on my end. So you might want to maybe clear your browser's cache or something like that. But Ryan, if you just send me an email, yeah, that's probably it, Ryan. That's probably it. But if try it when you get home or something like that. And then if you have any issues, send me a direct email and I'll create a free membership account for you and set you up with that. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day. Good luck. Dominate the GMAT. And I hope to have the opportunity to work with some of you guys soon. Take care, everyone.